Hello, miladies of inestimable value. Don't mistake her silence for weakness. That's just the part where you start digging your own grave. Most people never see it coming, not because she hides, but because they assume she won't strike. But when a Sigma female feels threatened, something eerie happens. She doesn't explode, she doesn't cry, she doesn't even flinch. Instead, she calculates. She retreats behind eyes that see straight through you, and what she does next? It's never loud, it's never dramatic, but it's terrifyingly effective. Fact: according to behavioral psychologists, women who rank highest in independence and analytical detachment are the least likely to respond with overt aggression, but are the most likely to retaliate with long-term strategic action. That's the Sigma female. She doesn't do petty revenge. She builds psychological empires on the ashes of your assumptions. And the scariest part? She'll make you think you're the one who pushed her away, right before she emotionally vanishes like a ghost with a PhD in human behavior. So grab your seat, because what happens when a Sigma female feels threatened isn't just a reaction, it's a masterclass in silent dominance. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll either want her on your team or pray she never noticed you exist. Number 1. She becomes the antidote to the threat's power. When a Sigma female feels threatened, she doesn't panic, scream, or even defend herself in the way most people expect. She simply studies the energy coming at her and transforms into the one thing that neutralizes it. She becomes the antidote. If the threat is loud and aggressive, she responds with silence so sharp it feels like a slap. If the threat is manipulative and emotional, she becomes pure logic, cutting through the drama like a scalpel. She doesn't fight the threat on its terms. She changes form so the threat can't touch her. She's not interested in proving a point or matching intensity. That's a waste of energy. What she does instead is shift into exactly what throws her opponent off balance. It's like playing mental chess with someone who didn't even realize they were in the game. You show up with fire, thinking you'll burn her, and she shows up as ice, not melting but freezing everything in your path. You try to control her with charm, and suddenly she's immune, looking at you like you're just another line in a script she's read 1,000 times. What makes it even more unsettling is that she never announces what she's doing. You don't get a warning. 1 minute you're confident, thinking you've got her figured out, and the next, your tactics don't work anymore. They bounce off her like rubber bullets. You can't read her. You can't predict her. And worst of all, you start second-guessing yourself. That's when the real shift happens. Not in her, but in you. Because the more you try to press her, the more you realize your usual strategies, aggression, guilt, games, manipulation, are completely useless. You're not dealing with someone who reacts. You're dealing with someone who adjusts. And that makes her incredibly hard to control, hurt, or even understand. She becomes whatever your threat can't handle. And the more pressure you apply, the more she mutates into your personal weakness. That's not survival. That's dominance disguised as adaptability. And by the time you figure out what just happened, she's already 5 steps ahead, evolving again, untouched, unreadable, and unbothered. Number 2, she mutates her identity to disarm the threat. When a Sigma female feels a threat creeping in, whether it's emotional, psychological, or even social, she doesn't confront it directly. She shifts. Not just her mood, but her entire presence. One moment she's approachable, soft-spoken, even disarmingly kind. The next she's detached, unreadable, and staring through you like you're a glitch in her field of vision. It's not an act. It's not manipulation. It's how she survives in a world that constantly underestimates her. She mutates her identity like armor, customized to the situation and the threat level. This isn't some fake persona to fool people. It's psychological defense at a master level. She understands that being one fixed version of herself makes her predictable, and being predictable makes her vulnerable. So she doesn't cling to a single identity. She rotates between versions of herself like a code breaker, switching languages mid-sentence. And if you're the threat, you'll never know who you're dealing with until it's too late. What throws people off is how seamless the shift is. You'll think you've got her figured out, that she's sweet, maybe even submissive. Then, in the span of a single conversation, She'll flip into someone who speaks like a prosecutor and looks at you like she's dissecting your soul. And the more you try to press her, the more her energy changes. It's like trying to grab water. The harder you grip, the faster it slips through your fingers. The truth is, she doesn't change because she's scared. She changes because it gives her control. When you expect warmth, she gives you cold. When you expect reaction, she gives you silence. When you expect fear, she gives you indifference. That inconsistency isn't confusion, it's precision. It forces people to tread carefully around her, not because she's dangerous in a traditional sense, but because you never know which version of her you'll activate. She doesn't just diffuse threats, she disorients them. And by the time you've adjusted to who you thought she was, that version no longer exists. Number 3, she ends it before it begins, by preemptively burning bridges. When a Sigma female senses a threat, she doesn't stall. She doesn't give it the benefit of the doubt. She doesn't wait to see how things unfold. The moment her intuition signals danger, emotional instability, manipulation, fake loyalty, covert disrespect, she cuts the cord. No drama, no explanations, just an instant shutdown of access, energy, and opportunity. To outsiders, it may seem abrupt or even reckless, but to her it's not impulsive, it's preemptive warfare. She doesn't believe in giving poison the chance to spread. If something feels off even slightly, she doesn't sit around analyzing it into paralysis. She trusts the voice in her gut, the one that has never lied to her, and acts before the threat has time to unfold. She's not afraid of loss. She's afraid of contamination, emotional, psychological, or spiritual. And if protecting her peace means burning bridges, she'll light the match herself and walk away without looking back. People often confuse this with coldness, but it's not that she lacks emotion. It's that she values her internal equilibrium more than the illusion of connection. She doesn't crave reconciliation. She doesn't need closure. She doesn't wait for betrayal to knock on her door when her instincts already heard it coming from miles away. What rattles people is how final it is. Once she burns that bridge, there's no rebuilding, no let's talk about it, no second chances. She doesn't threaten to leave. She already left. Quietly, completely, and permanently. It's not meant to punish anyone. It's a survival mechanism honed through life experience. She's learned that early exit is sometimes the only real power move, especially in a world where people are rewarded for wearing masks. To others, her actions look extreme, but to her, this isn't fear, it's strategy. She would rather be wrong and safe than right and destroyed. Because in her world, emotional sabotage doesn't come with a warning label. So when her radar detects even a whisper of danger, she doesn't ask questions. She walks, fast, and she takes the whole damn bridge with her. Number 4, she outsmarts the threat by adopting its blind spot. A Sigma female doesn't outmuscle a threat, she outsmarts it. She doesn't confront head-on unless she's already calculated the outcome. Instead, she studies the assumptions the threat is built on. She asks, what does this person expect from me? What do they assume I'll do? And then she becomes the one thing they never prepared for. That's her edge. She doesn't just respond, she adapts into your blind spot and hits where your ego left you exposed. If you think she's going to play nice, she becomes untamable. If you expect her to argue, she gives you silence so loud it rattles. If you assume she'll stay and explain herself, she disappears without a trace. Her power is in disrupting patterns, especially yours. She knows most people operate on autopilot. They expect predictable reactions. So when she breaks that pattern, it short-circuits your entire strategy. She doesn't fight fire with fire. That's too basic. If you come at her with fire, she turns into ice, emotionally untouchable and brutally logical. If you try to manipulate her with charm, she becomes a mirror that reflects your fakeness back at you. You won't get traction because she's not reacting, she's reading. Every move you make, every weakness you try to hide, every narrative you try to spin, she's already 10 steps ahead, calculating how to flip it in real time. What's truly unsettling is how fluid she is. Just when you think you've got her cornered, she shifts, mentally, emotionally, even socially, and you're stuck fighting an opponent who keeps changing shape. Not because she's confused about who she is, but because you are. Most people try to dominate by being louder, faster, more aggressive. The Sigma female dominates by being unreadable. She adopts the one version of herself that disarms your confidence and exposes your overconfidence. That's not reaction, that's precision. And by the time you realize she's playing a completely different game, you're already losing pieces you didn't know were on the board. She doesn't just survive the threat. She becomes its unsolvable equation. Number 5. She retreats to strategize, not to escape. When a Sigma female feels threatened, her first move is not to lash out or react emotionally. She steps back, quietly, instantly. And while some might assume she is running away or shutting down, that is not what is happening. She is not escaping, she is studying. She pulls away from the noise so she can observe the threat from a distance without distortion. She wants clarity, not chaos. She watches patterns, behaviors, words, and timing. Every little detail becomes a piece of data in her mental blueprint. She does not believe in rushing. Emotional reactions are easy to predict and easy to control. That is why she does the opposite. She gives no immediate feedback, no obvious emotion. She enters what feels like silence. But in her mind, strategy is forming. She is building a response that is not just effective, but personal. She wants to strike where it matters, in a way the threat will never forget. Her retreat is not a pause. It is a construction zone. She builds her counter silently, piece by piece. And the more dangerous the threat, the more precise her planning becomes. She does not just want to protect herself. She wants to make sure that the threat thinks twice before ever approaching again. And she will not return until she has that psychological weapon ready, custom designed for whoever thought they could corner her. People often misread her quietness as weakness. They think she is overwhelmed or unsure. But what they fail to see is that she is rewiring the battlefield while they're still throwing punches. And by the time she reappears, the fight is already over, because she has made sure there is nothing left to hit. She never retreats because she is afraid. She retreats because in that space of stillness, she becomes smarter, colder, and far more dangerous. That is her edge. While others react, she refines. While others speak, she calculates. And when she finally steps forward again, she is not the same version you tried to threaten. She is the solution you never saw coming. Number 6. She turns the threat into her personal evolution trigger. When a Sigma female feels threatened, she doesn't shrink. She doesn't fall apart. She transforms. What most people run from, she walks into, and not out of recklessness, but because she knows the threat is not just an obstacle, it's an invitation. While others see danger, she sees data. Pressure becomes her personal training ground. Pain becomes fuel. The threat doesn't weaken her, it reshapes her. She doesn't just want to get through it. She wants to become something else because of it. The way some people use heartbreak to write poetry, or failure to spark revenge, she uses threats to evolve. She upgrades her emotional software, builds new defenses, sharpens her instincts, and walks out of the fire with a new version of herself that didn't exist before. That's not survival, that's mutation, and it's intentional. She never asks, "Why is this happening to me?" She asks, "What is this showing me that I didn't see before?" Threats force her to look deeper, into others, into situations, into herself. They dig out the weak links, the emotional gaps, the outdated beliefs. She uses every confrontation like a diagnostic scan, scanning her psyche for what needs to be rebuilt or discarded. To others, it looks like she's detached, cold even. But what they don't realize is that she's under construction. Internally, she's doing the hard work, asking uncomfortable questions, confronting her blind spots, and tightening every screw in her mental armor. And by the time the threat thinks it's won, she's already rebuilt herself into someone it can't touch anymore. This is why people misjudge her. They think she's unaffected. But she's deeply affected, just not in the way that makes her collapse. She turns pressure into precision, threats into upgrades. She doesn't fight the experience. She becomes something more because of it. So when life throws her into chaos, she doesn't ask for mercy. She leans in, because every time someone tries to break her, they end up giving her the blueprint for her next evolution. Number 7. She activates her observation mode. You just became a lab rat. When a Sigma female feels something is off, An emotional shift, a manipulative move, or a subtle power play, she doesn't react. She switches modes. She stops talking, stops engaging, and stops feeding the dynamic with energy. It might seem like she's gone quiet, like she's pulling away or tuning out. But what's actually happening is far more dangerous. She's entered observation mode. And now, you're the subject of her analysis. She watches everything, your tone, your micro-expressions, the way your story doesn't quite line up with your behavior. She notes your inconsistencies like a human lie detector. She's not just listening to what you say. She's paying attention to what you avoid saying. What makes you flinch? What makes you over-explain? What makes your confidence crack for a split second before you recover? Every piece of it is being mentally recorded and filed under use later if needed. This is the part where most people underestimate her because they're used to reactions, tears, yelling, questions, confrontation. But the Sigma female doesn't give you that satisfaction. She gives you silence, not because she's retreating, but because she's dissecting. And once she enters this mode, everything becomes information. Even the pauses between your words become evidence. What's unnerving is that she won't let on. She might nod, she might smile. But it's not because she agrees, it's because she's studying the effect that moment has on you. She's watching how much you need her validation. She's measuring how deeply your ego relies on her reaction. You think you're in control of the conversation, but you're not. You're under a microscope, and she's the one adjusting the lens. The scariest part? She never forgets what she observes. You may think the moment passed, but she's already cataloged it, labeled it, and connected it to a bigger pattern. She doesn't collect information for drama. She collects it for precision. And if the time ever comes where she needs to act, emotionally, socially, or psychologically, she won't strike wildly. She'll hit with the force of everything she silently learned about you, and it will be surgical. Number 8. She becomes emotionally sterile on command. When a Sigma female feels threatened, she doesn't allow her emotions to take over. She doesn't spiral. She doesn't break. Instead, she makes a clean internal shift. She hits a switch, and just like that, her emotions go into quarantine. She becomes emotionally sterile, not numb, not repressed, but completely detached in a way that feels cold, calculated, and almost surgical. She can look someone in the eye, even someone she once deeply cared about, and feel absolutely nothing in that moment. No warmth, no fear, no anger, just pure stillness. It is not because she doesn't feel anything. It is because she knows exactly when not to. Emotions can be distractions. Reactions can be weaknesses. She understands that, especially when she is dealing with manipulation, disrespect, or subtle power games. So she locks her feelings away, not forever, but until it is safe to feel them on her own terms. To the person facing her, it can be chilling. They expect a reaction, a rise, maybe even a breakdown. But instead they get a version of her that feels almost inhuman. No begging, no accusations, no dramatic exits. Just a quiet, precise calm that says, "You're no longer worth my emotional bandwidth." It is the kind of stillness that unnerves people, because it is not weakness. It is control. It is restraint. It is the ability to be fully present in a situation without being consumed by it. Like a surgeon who can perform a procedure without flinching, she can operate in crisis mode with zero emotional leakage. It is not natural for most people, but for her it is instinct. She does not use this as a weapon. She uses it as a shield, because in a moment of threat, the one thing she will never allow is someone else having power over her emotional state. She would rather feel nothing than let someone else provoke her into losing herself. That's not detachment. That's discipline. And once she enters that state, there's no access. You can scream, you can beg, you can try to manipulate, but you will get nothing back. Because her feelings aren't gone. They're just locked in a vault. And you no longer have the key. Number 9, she stops mirroring your humanity. A Sigma female is often a quiet observer. Someone who knows how to mirror people just enough to keep them comfortable. She doesn't fake it, she simply reflects back your energy in small doses so you feel seen, safe, understood. It's part of her survival system. Blending in keeps things neutral. It lets her move through spaces without unnecessary friction. Most people don't even realize she's doing it. But the moment she feels threatened, that subtle mirroring ends. Immediately. She stops reflecting your tone, your warmth, your rhythm. She pulls back her energy and leaves you exposed to your own. The illusion of connection shatters. You feel it before you understand it. Something in the conversation changes. Something in her eyes hardens. And suddenly, you're talking to someone who isn't meeting you halfway anymore. It's not hostility, it's absence. The part of her that used to soften the space between you is gone. You're no longer speaking to the reflection you liked. You're speaking to the raw version of her that no longer cares about keeping things comfortable. And that shift is jarring. It feels like you're dealing with someone entirely different, someone colder, someone distant. Not because she has changed, but because she has stopped pretending there's a shared understanding. She no longer matches your emotional cues. If you laugh nervously, she won't join in. If you try to charm her, her face stays unreadable. If you try to guilt trip or emotionally sway her, she gives you nothing. You're left with just yourself, your tactics, your insecurities, your noise bouncing off the walls with no echo coming back. That silence, that indifference, it's intentional. She has pulled back her empathy like a curtain. This is not cruelty. This is survival. She mirrors humanity only when it feels safe. The second she senses a threat, she drops the performance. Not because she wants to hurt you, but because she refuses to hand over any part of her emotional reality to someone who cannot be trusted with it. And once she stops mirroring you, the message is clear. You were never on the same level. You just thought you were. Number 10. She removes your access before you know you're denied. When a Sigma female feels threatened or disrespected, she doesn't create a scene. She doesn't send long emotional messages, slam doors, or make a dramatic exit. She simply disappears, quietly, cleanly, and completely. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. You don't get a warning. There's no final speech. One day you're in her world, laughing, connecting, being seen, and the next it's like someone shut the lights off and erased your presence from her internal map. She removes your access before you even realize you've been denied. You were still playing the game. She already left the arena. This is not ghosting. This is surgical disconnection. A Sigma female knows exactly when something shifts. She feels the subtle turn in energy, the manipulation, the dishonesty, the power play. And she acts before the threat has a chance to fully land. Not with revenge, not with words, but with silence so final it makes your presence irrelevant. What hurts most is that she leaves no evidence, no closure, no chaos, just stillness. She doesn't argue, because arguments imply you still matter. She doesn't explain herself, because explanations are for people trying to be understood, and she's already decided you're not worth that effort. To the outside world, everything might look normal. But inside her world, the door has closed. Permanently. You'll only notice the absence when you reach out for the energy she used to give freely, and find emptiness instead. No warmth, no curiosity, no trace of the person who once made you feel seen. It's like being locked out of a room you didn't know had a door. And now, it's sealed shut. People often try to get back in. They test boundaries, they push buttons. But the Sigma female doesn't reopen access once it's been revoked. Because for her, disappearing isn't avoidance. It's judgment. It's her final verdict. You are no longer safe to her system. And if you're asking what happened, it means you weren't paying attention. Because she saw something in you that told her it was time to disappear. And she always listens to that signal the first time. Number 11. She becomes the calm in the chaos. And that's what scares you. When everything starts to unravel, most people break. They yell, they scramble, they cling. But not the Sigma female. When chaos hits, when emotions are high, threats are rising, and everyone else is losing their grip, she becomes calmer. Not because she is unaffected, but because she has been through storms that most people would not survive. Her calm is not an act. It is a learned state, forged through fire. She has already seen what rock bottom looks like. She has lived through betrayal, loss, pressure, silence, and survival. So when a new threat appears, she doesn't see it as a crisis. She sees it as familiar, expected, almost boring. And that unnerves people, because when you try to shake someone who does not flinch, it forces you to confront your own fear. She becomes colder, but not cruel, focused, but not frantic. While others are running in every direction, she slows everything down in her mind. She analyzes, filters, observes. Her heartbeat does not rise. Her expression does not change. She stands still while everything burns, and somehow she looks like she belongs there. That's what makes it terrifying. You expect her to argue, you expect her to cry, you expect her to match the panic you are projecting, but instead she just looks at you with a kind of silence that feels ancient, like she has already seen how this ends, and decided it is not worth her emotional investment. That lack of reaction? It's not apathy, it is experience. People mistake calm for weakness. They assume she is frozen or unsure, but what they are really seeing is power they cannot comprehend. She is not avoiding the chaos, she is controlling her response to it. And in doing that, she controls the room, the threat, the outcome. What scares people is not what she says or does. It is the fact that in a moment of high tension, she becomes more herself, more still, more centered, and that unshakable presence exposes how unstable everyone else really is. Number 12, she amplifies her aura to expose your weaknesses. There are times when a Sigma female doesn't retreat, doesn't go quiet, and doesn't pull back. Instead, she amplifies her presence to the point where it becomes uncomfortable, not for her but for the person who tried to challenge her. She does not raise her voice, she does not make threats, she simply turns up the intensity of her stillness, her focus, her awareness, until you feel like the room is shrinking around you. It is not something you can see in action, but you feel it. Her calm becomes too calm. Her silence stops feeling passive and starts to feel deliberate. Her gaze lingers a little longer than necessary, and suddenly the very things you were trying to hide, your lies, your insecurities, your cracks, start crawling to the surface. Not because she's calling them out, but because you are. She creates an atmosphere where pretending becomes impossible. You try to keep your composure, but it begins to slip. You say too much, you fidget, you deflect, because her presence is pressing against your ego without ever lifting a finger, and that is exactly what she wants. Her aura becomes a mirror, and the more you look at her, the more you see your own reflection, unfiltered and unedited. This is not accidental. She knows what she's doing. She knows how to hold space in a way that feels heavy for those with hidden motives. Her lack of reaction forces you to react. Her stillness becomes a pressure cooker, and the mask you wore when you approached her begins to melt under the heat of her silence. She does not intimidate with force. She overwhelms with truth, a truth she does not even have to speak out loud, because her energy already said enough. Her aura exposes the things you wanted to keep buried, and if you try to challenge her again, it only gets worse. Because the harder you try to look composed, the more obvious your discomfort becomes. She does not need to fight you. She just needs to exist fully in her energy and let you unravel yourself in response. She doesn't shout. She doesn't beg. She doesn't even flinch. When a Sigma female feels threatened, she becomes something else entirely, sharper, quieter, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. What most see as silence is actually strategy. What looks like distance is data collection. And what appears to be detachment is the forging of psychological armor so refined, no weapon, emotional or otherwise, can pierce it again. She doesn't react like the world expects her to. She rewrites the rules mid-game. She doesn't chase validation. She removes access. She doesn't just survive the threat. She evolves because of it. That's what makes her different. While others are stuck fighting symptoms, she targets root systems. While people waste energy confronting the threat, she alters the landscape, the power dynamics, even your perception of her, until the threat is neutralized without a single dramatic outburst. And by the time you realize what she's done, you're already locked out. The firewall has been updated, and she's not looking back. This is the Sigma female's quiet brutality. She doesn't just defend herself, she upgrades. So if you ever find yourself feeling her silence, her stare, or her absence, it's already too late. You weren't just dismissed. You were studied, decoded, and cut off at the source. She doesn't fight to win. She strategizes to evolve, and that's what makes her a threat to threats themselves. If this resonated with you, shook your perspective, or made you see the Sigma female in a whole new light, don't just scroll away in silence. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss content that peels back the mask and tells it exactly how it is. Like this video if it spoke truth you don't usually hear. Comment below with your thoughts. We read every single one. And share this with someone who thinks silence means surrender. Spoiler, it doesn't. This channel isn't for the average. It's for the aware, the evolving, and the unapologetically rare. So stay sharp, stay watching, and stay one step ahead.